Are we live?
Not yet.
Are we live?
Not yet.
Are we live?
Da 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 da.
Hi guys, Andy is very cheerful. We are on today with our dear friend Charles Davies.
Yes, we are. We're going to talk about how to make clear decisions.
And we're gonna do that on and
Hey,
so
well,
much more.
Don't do that. You're driving me crazy with the so much more stuff. On a wonderful chaos. Yes. So it took us a few months to get Charles to join us on this couch.
Why is that, Mr. Shaler?
I think he wanted to see what was going to become of us. I think he sort of thought, nice, fun thing you guys got going. Let's see where you take it.
You amateurs.
And I think he watched 1 or 2 episodes that he actually enjoyed. And he said, you know what? That would be fun.
Oh, which one did he watch?
He enjoyed one very recently. I really enjoyed it. He shared that he watched our Impersonal Personal, our show on Monday, a week ago, I guess. Yeah. And he said he really enjoyed it. And that was really nice. He called me and said he really had a good time watching it. So
nice.
And it's really sweet because there's I think in my life, there's people that come in and leave, and they're never really gone, that we're just not necessarily doing anything together at that moment. So I talk to Charlie, I'd say once every 2 to 3 months, just to call him to hear what he's doing. And he's always far more ambitious than I am. So it's always nice to hear someone who's taking their thoughts and their feelings and their energy and then pushing it in a direction to create some systems or ways of growing or thinking. What he's done is he's created a lot of coursework on how to be clear. Course is called How to Be Clear.
How to be clear.
And whenever I talk to him, I always say, hey, I'm always a bit abstract in my thinking. I'm like, it either feels good or it doesn't feel good. And then I do the things that feel good, so I feel clear. And he always says, no, Andy, it isn't that clear. Or something. He explains to me the science behind a lot of how I'll make my own decisions.
Nice.
So that's
are you able to explain the emotions behind how he makes his decisions?
He'll share what he shares, and sometimes I'll listen, but I never truly understand everything that he's trying to explain to me.
Okay.
And not because for any other reason that he has such a more detailed way of doing things than I do, but I'm sure on the show it'll be simpler for me, and we have a whole hour to discuss it.
I want to be 5 years old. Like, I've got a new thing. I want to be 5 years old on the show.
You're going to be like, I think that was it was the movie Philadelphia when he said, explain it to me like I'm 5 years old or something.
I haven't seen that movie.
It's a sad movie.
Is it with
It's with the American actor that won a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks, yeah.
But, yeah.
Incredible. In fact, the Philadelphia song sung by
Phil Collins?
No, it's not an 80s movie. Bruce Springsteen. It's one of my favorite songs. It always brings tears to my eyes. Outside of everything that he's done, which is lived kind of what I consider a bit of an alternative life, he's been a stand-up comedian in the Arctic, which does feel like almost a joke in itself.
Stand-up comedian in the Arctic.
So he was in the Arctic doing stand-up comedy.
Do you think we can trick him into doing?
Possibly, but I'm not sure. He learned most of the things in his life, as he said, from a Russian music Svengali, and he'll have to explain to us what the word Svengali means because I don't have a dictionary nearby. And he just told me right before we came on, he said it would be fun to introduce how we met, and I said, "What do you mean how we met? I have no idea." And we actually met at Case's funeral. So we met at Case's funeral the first time, which was a bit of a dizzying experience for me. And he said we met and talked on the roof. So that's how we first got introduced to one another. Yeah.
I met him in your kitchen.
Oh, wow. I remember. He said he didn't want to work with us. Remember that?
No.
I do remember. And actually, you were so right to have said it then, because basically what I remember you saying is, guys, I don't see the initiative and the desire enough from any single individual to hold the space and carry this forward, so that I trust. It was too much of a democracy. And I loved, because later on in my time, I said, he's right. Unless you got one person driving to make sure that this thing succeeds, it always fails.
What was the endeavor?
It was some men's group thing we were thinking of doing at some point, or I don't remember.
You had a name for it, like the paradigm or the experience or the experiment or something like that.
I think it was the experiment. Yeah.
And it felt like I didn't understand what it was, and it felt like you were like, well, does someone want to do this? And it was like, well, if you don't, then I don't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Very nice. So nice to have you, my friend.
Yeah, really nice to be here.
Yeah.
Stand-up comedian where?
In the Arctic.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
By mistake. I'd done a little bit of sort of stand-up comedy in Amsterdam. Do you know Tumler?
Yeah, I think I do know this. Yes.
It just must be around the corner from your house, where my friend Floris Colt, who also lives around the corner from you, he was involved in a thing called Stand-Up Inspiration, and he invited me to do a talk about money, and I did this. So you know Peter Koenig's work. I decided to try and condense all of that into a 5-minute stand-up set, which was basically the sort of the hook in it was that you can either look at money as a thing, or you can kind of look like into money, like it's a mirror, like you can see why it means the things it means to you. And I was saying, like, if you know the difference between looking like at a mirror, like, oh, it's a mirror, it's a reflective thing, in a mirror where you're like, oh, it's me, then that separates you from cats who can't tell the difference, like who look in a mirror and like, oh my god, it's a cat. That's what we're like with money. Oh my god, it's fear, or oh my god, it's power, or something like that. Without realizing that it's more like a mirror. Anyway, so I did the talk, and then months later, I'd moved to Norway, and I was at a family party, and someone said, "Oh, you're the stand-up comic." And I was like, no. They're like, you must. I was just like, oh, you must mean someone else. They're like, no, we saw the thing of you at that stand-up comedy club in Amsterdam. It's like, you need to meet our friend. He's a stand-up comic. He runs a club here. He's doing a night, so you should go along. And it's like, well, okay. And so I got an invitation. Oh, come and have a cup of coffee. Okay, and got to have the cup of coffee. And he's like, okay, how many minutes do you want? And it's like, I don't know. It's like, okay. And my first stand-up comedy show was on my birthday. Like, he said, oh, do you want to come? It's on the 29th September. And I was like, well, okay, it sounds like I have to say yes to this. And so I got the audience to sing me happy birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, which is really nice. Yeah.
Well, Floris Kut remembers it. He says it was a brilliant talk.
It's moments like this when I see how small Amsterdam is, because I know Floris, but I couldn't connect the last name. Hi, Floris.
Hi, Floris. Very funny. So how was it? You went to Case's funeral.
Yeah.
It was one of the weirdest. I was walking with a mutual friend.
Give a bit of context for our viewers.
Case was my mentor. I moved to Amsterdam to work with Case. He was a very unique individual, very stubborn in everything he did.
You can read all about it in the last letter.
I wrote the last letter after Case died. It was a sort of memoriam to him that no one wanted to read, so I had to write it about myself. So, but what happened was that I was speaking to someone today about it. I took a long walk with one of our mutual friends, Casper, and he said, one of the weirdest experiences during Case's funeral was I'm sitting there and I'm the one who spent the last 10 years of his life working with him every single day for 3 or 4 hours a day. We were inseparable. Everyone thought we were partners. He was my gay partner. And at the funeral, I didn't speak. Although everyone would know I'd be comfortable speaking, but I just didn't speak. So there was, his dad went up and there was the whole thing. And it was really a weird experience for me because it was so not connected to anything the case was about that it felt almost like who he was or how he would have wanted to celebrate his life.
Oh, do you think so?
Yeah. In terms of how I was with him, right? There was none of the connection,
Right.
I mean, the funniest line, you probably didn't get some of it because it was in Dutch, But when his dad said, if you want to understand how great Case is, just look at his parents. Like there was a lot of pushing. You didn't hear the Dutch, did you? Because you didn't get some of it.
No, but I spoke.
Yeah, okay. But there were a lot of a lot of the speaking in the Dutch was like that. But what did you say?
No, so when I got there, Peter Koenig had sent a message to be read at the service.
Oh yeah, I remember that now. Right? Yeah,
and I can't remember who I spoke to when I arrived, but they said Peter's sent this thing and it's in English, so would you mind reading it? And I said, well, sure, okay, of course. And then I was in the service and like I hadn't read it before,
okay,
and I didn't know when I was going to be reading it, and so the whole thing's going on in Dutch. And it's like Charles. oh right. And so I had to go up and then just read this thing like word by word, fresh, not knowing what it was. And then because Peter's mischievous, it got to a certain point where it said, and because I can't be there with you today, I'm sending Charles as my representative to give and receive hugs. So if you would have hugged me, you know, if I was there, but I'm not there, then hug Charles instead. Or if you need a hug Charles instead. And I'm like reading like, oh, okay, well, this is news to me, but okay, fine.
Oh, that's funny.
So I probably hugged like 50 people.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was the day after that when there was a circle in this house where we all sat in a circle and we all shared what Case had meant to us, where it was a far more what would have been more of traditional of what Case did in his life.
Yeah.
So in this presentation or romanticization or, you know, testament to his life, it was a little bit more of a presentation, where the day after it was more of a soulful reflection of what was going on inside of ourselves. So it was a lot more tears that were connected more towards the memorial of what he'd meant to us, where the service was a little bit more of I can't explain it. It was more detached, at least from my experience. Yeah.
It's so fun. I mention it to people all the time as being like for me a funeral service or memorial or whatever that actually worked.
Wow.
Like in a way that others maybe haven't. And it's the first time I saw a body actually. And it was something so clear happened for me of like I felt like Case was a really dear friend. But I think we only met in person twice.
Yeah.
But like whenever I mention him, it's like, oh, my dear friend who I met twice, you know, but like it was just a click. But it really felt in the service like I didn't know the people around him. And I didn't really know very much of his story and things like that. And it felt to me like that arrived in the room. And maybe I mean, of course I didn't understand a lot of it. I mean, I had actually translations for the speeches.
Oh, wow.
So I got those. But by the end of that sort of ceremony piece, I really felt like, okay, like when the body's gone, it's okay, because you know he's not there.
Yeah.
So it's like we don't need the body anymore. It's okay to like say goodbye to that. And
oh yeah, because there was a time in the service when his body was there and then it wasn't there anymore. Was that right?
Yeah, there was something like that. I can't remember exactly, but
fascinating.
But it was this sort of two-part thing of like, you know, it's sort of obvious when you say it out loud, but really experiencing that thing of like, okay, it's like we don't need his, or there's no point hanging on to the body kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing there, and actually, the sort of inspiration of him, or the sort of qualities of him, it's like I could feel how like, oh, he's in these people in the room.
Yeah.
And I could experience the way that he sort of lived in that, you know, in that inspiration into others.
Yeah.
And
that I can certainly identify with for sure.
Yeah. And then, and also, I think because we'd only met a couple of times, it was a sort of feeling of like, well, if I was in England, right, and I hadn't known that he died, he'd still be alive, as far as I was concerned. It wouldn't make any material difference. You know, his presence would be the same in my life. And so it felt a little bit like, well, okay, we've said goodbye to the body because there's nothing to hold on to there. And I've got a real strong sense of like what he meant, and I'm not going to lose that.
Yeah.
And that sort of coming together of everyone felt like a way of a little bit locking that in, of like, okay, that can't be lost now.
Yeah, that's beautiful. In fact, it's beautiful because, you know, obviously Case mentored me for those 10 years that we were actively working together. And now I've been working and mentoring a lot with Bambos. So in a way, there's this kind of beautifully sad moment for me, which I can, even now it gets really emotional, is where I'll see him embodying Case. And, you know, and it's sort of like the gift that you give forward. And you know, you don't choose the student, student chooses you in some way. So there's just the beauty is what you've just shared, is when you get to see that the gift that you've received, you can pass on in a way that somebody else now gets to pass it on to the next. So yeah, I fully can appreciate that. Yeah. It's beautiful. I haven't given a lot of thought to the funeral. So to have discussed it a lot today was quite an interesting coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the thing that I told you earlier, what was missing for me was that you know, Case was a non-traditionalist, right? He didn't conform to anything in society. Yeah. And once he died, the parents took responsibility for the funeral and the arrangement and the talks and how it was going to be run. And they basically saw him once a year. And yet it's interesting, what I learned in a funeral is like, I might've been with him every single day for 10 years of the last 10 years of his life. But when the funeral comes, it's like all of a sudden I'm following whatever they want. So in a way, I kind of just said, let it be the way it's meant to be. But I couldn't identify with that process because it wasn't how we held space together. That was the feeling.
It wasn't for you.
Yeah, exactly.
It wasn't for you. You know, it was for them.
Yeah, thank you. It wasn't for me. Agreed. Yeah.
You know, I think it probably did my sense is it did its job really well.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like you had the thing that was for you the next day.
Yeah.
And that
exactly.
Yeah, really well. So it sounds like you had two things that worked really well.
Well, what sounds sweet for me was what I got from you just now, which I thank you because it really is a gift, was that actually in its way, it embodied the fact that each person took away part of Case in them, and you could feel that. And as you explained it to me, I could feel it. So yes, everyone in that room was there because he touched them in a way, and you couldn't be around him without being touched because it was either you loved him or you hated him. Like there was no in between. You know, he was so forceful in his teaching that with love. I love that you didn't get to spend those years with him. You got him in the later years when he cooled down. When he was, oh fuck, man. Oh, if you had to live through the shit, I remember I would sweat through shirts. Like as I was in the coaching sessions with him, because he was so determined for you to have a non-dual experience before he left, that it was like a pressure chamber. So it was like a vibration of tension. And you know, I have a very empathetic state. So I'm feeling the pressure of the person who's not gonna, you know, in quotes, break. And they had to, in quotes, break so that Case could fulfill what his idea was, which was giving you an experience that you would see the world differently. And I'm on the sidelines feeling so compassionate to this person who can't let go of their identity. And it was painful. It was painful.
I remember, and I think you've listened to this conversation because you might not remember, but you told me that you had recordings of sessions he'd done that you weren't there.
Yeah, tons of them. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's one where I was standing in a field at a festival and we were on the phone. And, you know, so when he was doing work with identity, there'd be this, I am this and this, or I am not this and this.
Yeah.
Or his thing was the it's not that I'm not.
Yeah, the double negative. He was like fanatical about the double negative.
Right.
Yes.
And so he's trying to explain something to me. Or he's just going, I can't remember the details. He's hammering away, like you say, you know, da 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 da. And I said like, okay, Case, yeah, I think right, I'm nearly there. Like I'm nearly there. I've nearly got it. And he goes, no, you're not. I'm like, no, I think I am. I think I'm nearly there. I've nearly got it. He's like, well, it's not that you're not nearly there. I'm like, I was like, no, I think, you know, and it just went round in circles. But like,
yeah,
you know, you'll definitely know this, but that thing where you're like, this is completely infuriating. I don't understand what's happening, and I'm laughing.
Yes,
you know, all at once.
Yeah, and that's where it was. Like every time the person would sort of flip, you'd be laughter and tears, and then they try to reattach to something that they could take control of. Like the first statement was always like, "How do I not lose this space?" And then they're gone. You know, as soon as you ask, "How do I stay here?" You're out.
Yeah. So this is, I mean, I'll take the lead for a moment, but like it's a really it links so clearly to what I do with clarity.
No. We don't want to talk about anything on the subject of the show. Like,
sorry.
Sorry. So let's segue. Let's start the show over again. It's 20 minutes in, and we're going to go back to what we said.
We're going to talk about Case.
We're going to talk about Case. No, clarity. So we came here because you have, for a long time, been discussing making clear decisions, right?
Yeah.
And or clarify that, please, so we segue back to a subject.
No, but I mean, it's directly linked to what we were just talking about.
Okay.
And that thing of I am, you know, it's not that I'm not, and I'm nearly there, and all of that, and particularly people grabbing back onto something to hold on to, all of that. But like, for me, my sort of path was starting out as a journalist, as an editor, people coming with stories, and me having to choose, like, actually make decisions there of like, is this in or is this not in?
Mm-hmm.
And the way you'd end up doing it's like, well, is this us? You know, like as a magazine, is this the sort of thing that we would do?
Yeah.
But that's a kind of deathly way of choosing. And I could always feel like there's something else. There's something like in a story that's really alive. It's almost like there's a quality that's in all the stories that are really alive.
Mm-hmm.
And about 2-3 years after I stopped being a journalist, I had this like one moment. I was at home and I grabbed this piece of fluorescent paper and I drew out these symbols of like a heart and a hand and a little, like some little circles to be like a crowd and a flower and a this and this. And I was like, okay, I've got the things, you know, like when there's a story that's really alive and full of something, then it's something that wants to grow. It's something that makes sense. It's something that you identify with. It's something that feels light, right?
Mm.
And I started to use these things as kind of criteria or like questions. So someone would come with a project and they'd say, I'm thinking of doing this and this. And so I'd say, okay, well, does it feel light? Does it want to grow? Is it you? And I had this little set of questions, and again, it would work. Not to like, oh, and now we'll write a story about it, but like people would actually tune into what their idea really was, what their project really was, where the life in the project really was. And so over years, I refined this process, which is a very clear ideas process. I have the very clear ideas process.
I've still got other cards you gave me from the years past.
Yeah, I'm sure. And it's these little questions that you just go through with any idea you have, any project you're working on, where the sort of most refined version of them now is just that you're starting on something, and instead of just going like, oh, I'm going to write a book, or like, oh, I need to go do some shopping, or I think I want to go on holiday. You imagine you get the idea, you know, you imagine you're there doing the thing.
Yeah.
And then you ask yourself, is this what I need? Is this what I want? Is this what I demand? Is this what I love? Is this what I wish for? Is this what I dream of? is this what I live for?
But okay, sorry. Can I ask? Because as you've just described that, and I hear it in my head.
Mm.
So and this is weird because I'm always going to reflect back to what's going on in me, so you can see. I get confused with those questions.
Yeah.
So if I say, oh, I see that place and I want to go there, then I would just go there.
Yeah, I know you would. You probably don't need questions. It's fine.
No. That's not the point. But
okay.
So I'm asking you, like, would you say that I'm not trying to be a dick. Okay, good. Just to make that clear. So is it I'm going to ask myself these questions when there are things in my thought process that I'm not deciding around so that I can make those decisions. So it's really where I'm not able to make decisions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, for me, it's when you can feel the frustration.
Okay.
Or you can feel the ambition. You can feel the something in you that is like, I've got to do something. And you maybe have the idea of like, I think this means I should go, I should start a company,
Okay.
But the feeling doesn't relax. The feeling isn't like, oh, good, he heard us, yes, that's the right.
And you don't do anything about it. There's an I think, and you don't act on it.
Or you start, but you're kind of pushing through treacle.
Okay.
Like, are you writing your book? Yeah, I'm sort of writing my book. Like, how's your company going? Yeah, it's and you can kind of feel that even though you're putting energy in, there's resistance there.
Got it. Yeah.
And so it's like a systematic way of clearing away any resistance.
Nice.
Yeah.
Show over.
Yeah.
I am. Oh, you.
As I'm listening to you, I'm wondering. I'm still confused as to under what context would you use these questions.
Can I share a story and then have that play into this? And so it's interesting because Ronnie and I are very different around how we go around decision making. If I had to explain it, I would say I'm big picture thinking all the time, and Ronnie's very detail oriented. So like I'll say I want to live in the countryside, and I want to be near nature.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining an experience, and then she says, well, is it this location or this location or this location? And I'm like, I can't tell you what the location is because it might be the location, but the wrong house. But I might find in the weirdest place, I might have that experience, and then that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in some funny way, I've often seen, and I don't know how this would equate with your modeling, which is why I share, is that I'm like, oh, I have the intention to live in there. I don't have any resistance. And now I put out feelers to see where I feel like I'm drawn to. And I'll know when I'm there as long as I allowed myself to be open.
Mm-hmm.
She'll want to control the process and sometimes get frustrated that we can't manage it as well as she'd like to.
Yeah. Yeah. So was there a question, or should I just?
Yeah. I'd love a psychoanalysis of what I've described to you. Is that is there something that you would run as a process through that between the two of us where you'd say, oh, this is where you are with it. This is how the system might help someone like me. This is how it might help someone like Ronnie.
Nice.
So if you put the questions to one side, where it starts is it's kind of like how to work with a commitment that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So like, in that moment where you're like, I want to live in the countryside and it looks like this. What's really happening is there's a kind of commitment in you that you've noticed. It's like it's there already. It's not like it's not someone's told you need to live in the countryside. There's this something that you're holding on to.
Yeah.
And I think it's always like that. Like before the idea comes, there's the kind of holding.
Yeah.
Of like, I need to. And someone says, oh, do you want to come do this stand-up comedy show? You're like, yes, that's it. And the bit of you that's been holding on goes, oh, thank God I've been heard. And it's almost like there's two ways that you can work with those commitments. What I hear the way you're saying it is like, it's almost like you don't need the idea bit. You just go sort of straight from the feeling's there, and then the action comes from it. You know, it's almost like patience, and then you're like, oh, a house, all right, I'll move in there in the country, good, done. But sometimes it's useful to be able to express it, and maybe get down into the detail of it and things like that. Maybe be able to put it in words so you can meet someone else in their commitment and what they're holding on to. And so like all of this work, all of the work I do, it's like how to relate to what your commitments are, how to relate to what you need, how to listen for what you need, kind of how to notice, you know, like we hold our commitments as tension in the body, right? You kind of hold on to an idea almost physically. So it's like how to notice that tension, how to interpret it, and how to act on it. And
Charles, as you're speaking and seeing how using your hands to express, I feel that you've had a really big experience which brought you to this process, right?
I don't think so. I think it's more just practice.
So this is more a theory, or have you actually put it into practice yourself?
No, what I mean is it's like years and years and years of like just not being willing anymore to kind of feel the sort of frustration or resistance or doubt or whatever, and then kind of push myself to ignore it.
I guess the question, if I can also try to rephrase, would be where in your life have you seen you use these tools, and how has it benefited you?
Oh God, I use it everywhere.
Yeah, I figured that, but give us a good juicy example of one, just so.
This house that I'm living in now, I needed to move, and so I sat down and thought, like, okay, you know, like you do, of like, oh, I want to live in the countryside, like, where do I want to live? And I get a kind of rough image of it, but then by asking the questions, I'm like, okay, where do I need to live? And I'm like, all right, somewhere with space and light, you know, like, okay, but where do I want to live? Okay, somewhere where it's a bit special, where, you know, okay, but where do I demand to live? And it's like, okay, has to have this, has to have this. And it becomes more and more like this really precise brief of like it. And so kind of running from where you would be to where Ronnie would be, of like, I want to live somewhere that's beautiful, and it has to have this kind of tap and, you know, these many plug sockets or something, like get the full picture. And then, because it was so clear, instead of going and looking at 100 different estate agent sites and then going and visiting 100 different flats, I just went through the listings, and it was like, no, is that one? Yes. Ring them up. I'm like, can I see it? Well, COVID, you can't see it. It's like, oh, it's all right, I'll take it anyway. And they're like, well, we're going to see some other people. I'm like, I don't care, I want it. And they came back and they're like, well, there's this problem, there's this problem. And like, rather than, and there's, you know, I felt they're like, oh God, mate, it's not going to work. But because the commitment was so strong, because the idea was so clear, I was like, I do not want to do these, you know, this, I'm going to have to call this person, I'm going to have to work that thing out, or I'm going to have to stretch to make this thing work. But there was no doubt. It's like, it has to be this house, it has to be this flat. And so it's like the commitment was really wholehearted and without doubt, because I've done that little bit of extra work of making it clear. Yeah. And so then action that wouldn't, I know that if I hadn't done that, I'd have looked at 10 flats. Yeah. Or I'd have got to that point where they're like, sorry, man, it's not going to work. And I'd be like, that's a shame. But it's like, no, this is happening, whether you like it or not, kind of thing. Yeah.
I've often said to Ronnie, so now we've set our intention to be in the country. Now we have to educate ourselves on what it is that where we sense that this is where we're comfortable. And so, of course, we've done our search on the real estate. We've looked at the houses and discussed the specifications you're mentioning. Like, does it have to have 2 or 3 bedrooms? Does it have this? Does it have that? So we've done that. And it was kind of interesting because as you were talking right now, I also realized there's something else that I'm always doing is I need to know when I can say yes wholeheartedly, and I need to know enough to know when I can say yes wholeheartedly. So in the weird way, as soon as I commit, I'm educating myself so that when the real opportunity hits, I say yes in the second, not a week later. It's like we're in the house and we're like, how do we sign the contract? Where the real estate said, well, hold on, what do you mean? Like, no, how do we get this house immediately? Yeah. I know that feeling, of course.
Yeah.
I've got something I'm going to send you afterwards that I think will give you a erection, maybe an orgasm, hopefully. It was the work that Case and I spent a good first 3 years of our lives together. It was called the Change Model. And you'll see it aligned, I know, with what you've now done for sure. It's our 8 stages of what one does to do thoughtful change in their lives. And each one has a polarity. Each stage has a polarity in it of a masculine, feminine trait. So you'll appreciate it. And it was so complicated, no one could ever use it, but you'll maybe laughingly enjoy it. Beautiful. I look forward to that. Talking to you after I send it to you. Flora sent us something.
The Tao that can be spoken about is not the real Tao, as some people say. Writing down clarity may also kill the life within it. And at the same time, we tend to forget / lose our direction when we don't have clarity. Yet this clarity must also be a living thing. Paradox.
It's the first time a guest reads the comment.
Yeah, nice. You're the first time a guest has read our comment. That's great. Flores, I think you're speaking nonsense. Let's just move on to the next statement.
That will delight Flores.
What'd you say?
I think that will delight Flores.
I couldn't agree with Flores anymore. I think the saddest thing in life, and I think we've discussed it, is that you're so clear in your heart, you're so clear in your head, and now you just feel in flow. And then the society around you starts wanting you to validate it, to justify it, to explain why it has to be that way in the form that you've created. And then all of a sudden, you're in the state of having to defend something that you don't even need or want to defend.
But you don't do that, though, do you?
No, I don't. But I'm saying society does.
No, but do you feel that pressure?
Never. But
then what are you talking about?
Okay, no, I'm talking about everyone that I work or coach with, because someone says to me, Andy, I just decided I'm going to do this course. I'm going to be a master Reiki practitioner.
Yeah.
And then they're all excited about it. And then they go to tell their boyfriend, I'm going to be a master Reiki. Why are you doing that?
Right. No. So this is great. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Yeah. What's a bad thing?
The you were saying sort of that you have society and you have to justify yourself to them and I think it's great, right? Because what I think happens is when you have that first idea of like, I want to become a Reiki master.
Yeah.
That's like one part of you gets excited.
Yeah.
Like it might be your idealistic self or your emotional self or something like that.
Yeah.
But you might not have taken a full kind of walk around the idea, right?
Okay.
So you looked at it from the perspective of idealism and emotion.
Pure excitement.
Right. But you haven't looked at it from practicality, say.
Yeah.
And so what happens when the boyfriend comes and he's like, oh, I don't know why you're doing that. It doesn't make any sense. It's going to cost loads of money. No. You're like, oh. And that's not a bad thing. It's because it's a chance for you to get clearer. What it means is in that moment, your practical self is like, you didn't ask me, did you? You know, it's like the boyfriend doesn't really exist. It's your practical self suddenly being woken up and being like, oh, hi, guy. We decided we're doing a Reiki course, and it's going to cost loads of money that we don't have, and it's going to be in a different city, and it's going to take loads of time. It means we can't. And the practical self's like, what? Oh, you're kidding. Like, why? No, that's not going to work at all. What about this? And And basically comes with all the other commitments that you've forgotten to take into account.
Yeah, but you're totally right. And I think it's missing the point, because when that boyfriend says it to the wife or the girlfriend, right? That boyfriend just became her father. So we're really not even talking about the decision making. We're talking about the inability of an individual to make peace with the fact that the boyfriend is representing the mommy daddy issues that they have in the house. You know what I mean? It's almost always a mommy daddy issue, as far as I can see.
So you're saying that
I'm saying he's right, but I see that what my challenge always is, he's right in the perfect world, because I always think that the dynamic between people and society is they haven't made peace with their own shadow. So when I say to you, why are you doing that? Then the voice that comes up in the person's head is the parent that didn't love them. And then they start saying, oh, I'm now not being loved by my partner. So instead of it becoming, like you say, a clear decision, it's become a fight around why I haven't healed from daddy issues.
And she's probably a 6-year-old.
She's regressed to an earlier version of herself, for instance. So that's does that push too far away, or what's your where do your eyes go when you hear that? Sorry.
I just never go there. It's like to me, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Like the whole thing of like mothers and fathers and regressing and it's I just don't care.
Well, I mean, I would like not to care, but what happens when the woman is angry at the husband or the girlfriend or boyfriend, right? Doesn't really matter. And that's the issue that's not being spoken about.
Well, the bit that I care about is that whenever there's frustration or anger or enthusiasm or whatever it might be, it's something that you've committed to trying to make itself heard. It's something that you need, trying to, get what it needs.
Yeah.
And so long as you can interpret that and listen for what it's asking for and then act on it, then it's all good.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then it's trouble. And that's it. It doesn't matter about why. Who cares if it's because of mummy issues or daddy issues?
That's just a way of creating a very simple generalization. Yeah, I got you. Great.
But like, it's just, if the feeling is there, it knows. It knows. Like, if there's a doubt there, it's not random. It's always because there's something else that you're holding on to, that you've committed to hold on to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're like, I'm going to do the Reiki course, and the bit of you that's like, oh no, it's a stupid idea. You're not going to be able to do this. Is the bit that is committed to keeping you safe, or is the bit that is committed to like making sure that you're liked, or that you're not too busy, or whatever it might be. And so, if for me, it feels like the practice, when it comes to being clear, is just sort of trying to catch yourself and switch in that moment to just listening for the feeling and what it wants.
Yeah.
And so the tools that I've developed, the clear ideas and the other things, they're all that. It's all just like, how can I listen for, be clear in my listening, be clear in my interpretation, and be clear in my kind of enacting of the things that I'm committed to.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
And Catherine, yes, the inner critic would be mommy daddy issues. It's just a general term I use quickly so I don't have to discuss it too long. Yes. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. When I hear you talk, it's funny. I hear a higher functioning individual who clearly has a vision of where they want to go. Meaning, I've noticed at least in my experience, that people often are so internally constricted, dealing with I'm going to use Catherine's Sheridan's terminology, with this inner critic, that even making the decisions are having a lot to do with overcoming the inner critic, rather than just knowing how to, because there's the logical self, the self that says, I can logically say why this is the best decision to make. But then there's that emotional self that's always sabotaging it because of the inner critic.
I don't believe that.
Oh, nice.
No,
okay.
no.
So what am I missing there? What do you see?
I think it's literally, it's all just stuff that you're committed to, right? You can label this half as emotional and inner critic and kind of wrong.
But let's slow down. I need to get this now, because I love when someone makes a statement like what you made, because now I have to like twist my entire brain off and now connect totally with what you're saying. So start again. Now I've said, I think that there are things people want to achieve and they logically know that they're the right things. And then there's an inner critic that sabotages it. And you're saying, no, Andy, I see it wrong. So now start again. Now, what am I missing in that picture?
So what you're saying is someone has something that they want to do. They're like, a new idea. Like, oh, I want to buy a yacht.
Yeah.
And then what you're saying is then there's something that stands in the way.
Yes.
Say an old idea.
Mm-hmm.
You shouldn't buy a yacht. Save your money or something like that.
Okay.
What I hear in how you're talking about and how people talk about those things generally is it's like the new thing is good and the old stuff is, self-limiting beliefs or pathologies or mummy daddy issues or inner critic or
whatever it is. Yeah.
I just shove all of that away. Forget any sort of charge or loadedness of like this half and that half. It's just new idea or old idea. The new idea is buy a yacht and the old idea is save all your money.
Okay.
And it's great. They're both great. They're both good things. Buying yachts, lovely. Saving your money, lovely. At a certain point, you committed to saving all your money, for whatever reason. And now today, you're like, oh, I want to buy a yacht. And in that moment where you kind of try to make that new commitment to buying the yacht, the old commitment raises its hand. It's like, do you remember that we decided we were going to save all our money because we want to be safe, or we want to buy a house, or whatever it might be? And in that moment, you can go like, oh, it's a mummy, daddy, inner critic issue, and then you get into this whole thing, and you have to go back through your history, or you beat yourself up for not being clearer, or whatever it might be. Or you just go, oh, okay, new commitment, buying yacht, old commitment, saving money, and then you just have to choose. Like, if you can look at them plainly without charging them good or bad or anything like that, you've just got two commitments that you can play with. And the sort of simplest version of it is just going like, okay, well, the thing of saving the money, does that still stand today? It's been my commitment for 20 years to save as much money as I can. Today I want to buy a yacht. Does this one still stand? And it might be like, no, it doesn't. I'm going to buy a yacht. And then that one is like, oh, okay, great, fine. I'm off duty. Or you might be like, oh, God, yes, still stands. Have to save all the money. Do I need the yacht? No, I don't actually need a yacht. Why did I get excited about the yacht? Oh, because it's fun and new and made me feel good. And it's like, well, okay, I'll find a fun, new, feel-good thing to do that also saves me money. I'll get employed to sail on a yacht or whatever it might be. But it's like, for me, it feels like so much clarity is destroyed by adding those layers of talking about things as, pathologies or self-limiting beliefs or inner critics or any of that. And
so as you talk, I completely agree. I mean, this is my life, and yet I love that Flores is on. He's again validating. Charlie, no, people make a lot of money coaching people into mental complexity. So I would say I'm a Buddhist until I become a Taoist, meaning that yes, life is struggle, but as soon as all my struggle is gone, things are as they are. Meaning that a Taoist would often, and I summarize in my simplicity, they just state things as they are. It just is. This just is. Mm-hmm. And so when I hear you speak, I hear very much a Taoist way of looking at the world. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. But in my own experience, I don't know if I could have lived what you're sharing with me right now if I didn't clear out all that shit, because that shit was deciding the decisions I was making, and my decisions weren't good.
But it's not shit. None of it was shit.
Okay.
It's not shit to clear out. It's just how well are you listening to all of the things, you know, and that you've ever committed to? Like, how well are you kind of keeping account of which ones to hold on to and not to hold on to? They're not shit. Like they might have been great in the moment. It might just be you found something better.
Yeah, nice.
Some shit because you found something that's more important to you.
No, I got it. Yeah.
So you're not adding a good or bad value to the actual thing.
Not at all. Like the thing that delights me so much in this work is this sort of simplicity of how do you hold on to an idea? That's the thing, right? When you see an advert and it says going on holiday to the Bahamas, you might be like, oh, I really want that. And then, you know, your phone beeps and you're like, oh, and then like, oh, I need to answer those emails, and you forget about it. You know, in that moment, you saw the idea, you're like, oh, I'd really like that, but it goes.
Yeah.
How do you hold on to the idea? Because, you know, in the moment, I was like, I really want to go on holiday to the Bahamas. We get distracted. Right? If you go to a Buddhist meditation session, it's the same thing. Right? You have the teaching at the beginning, and they'll say like, it's better to be loving than to hate everyone. And you're like, oh, that sounds like a really good idea. They're like, so, you know, the rest of the week, the rest of your life, you should be loving and not hate everyone. You're like, oh man, yeah, I can feel it, and that really feels good. Right? Okay. Oh, that's the end of the class. You're like, hey, what are you doing? You know, you've parked in my spot. You know, and it's gone.
Yeah.
And so, in both of those things, the question is like, how do you hold on to an idea? How do you switch it from being like, oh, that's a nice thing, oh, I lost it again, to being something that becomes how you navigate, you know, until it becomes a commitment that you just live, you know?
Yeah.
And it's big. It's clear to me that it's this really simple process, holding on to an idea, right? And in the sort of the meditation practice that I've learned is this thing of placement meditation, right? Which is that you do the first bit, the analytical meditation, which is like being loving is better than being hateful, because when you're hateful, you don't really see what's happening. When you're loving, you're kind of connected to the world. When it comes to getting anything you want, you kind of have to be connected to the world, because that's where everything comes from. So, you know, if you're loving, you see clearly and you're happy. So it's better to be there. And you're like, oh, okay, I feel it. Good. But it's no good to get the sense of it, because then your mind will wander off to the next thing. You know, it's like thoughts isn't where we keep that stuff. But in that moment, you're like, oh, I feel it. Like, oh, yeah, right. Oh, this, I can identify a bit with this possibility of being the sort of person who is more loving than full of hate. And so then you have this second bit, which is placement meditation, which you sit with and hold for as long as possible the feeling of that. Not the logic, not the analysis, or anything like that, just the feeling. And if you hold it for long enough, you go through these stages. I've got this little, I did a book of poems for meditation, and I wrote as sort of simply as I could the steps of like committing. So you call it to mind, this idea. You're like, I'm going to be more loving than hateful, whatever. You call it to mind, then you notice how it feels. So not just the logic, but like, how does that actually feel to be more loving than full of hate? And then you invest your attention in it.
It feels spacious.
Spacious, yeah.
But like, you're not everywhere. You invest your attention in that thing, and then you stay with it. Like when your mind is like, oh, but also this, you're like, no, come back, stay with it. And then make yourself familiar with it. You know, like it's a new room that you've walked into. Oh, okay, well, what's here? And so you're like, oh, okay, I get it. And then make yourself at home with it. It's not just like a room that you've walked in. You're like, oh, okay, I see what's here. You're like, settled in. Ah, yeah, being loving, not being hateful. Ah, yeah. This feels like home. And then you identify with it. Like, oh, this is me. I am. I'm that person. I'm a loving all the time, not hating all the time person. Until it feels like the ground you stand on. Until there's no gap between you and it. So that even if you make no effort at all, that quality is still naturally alive in you. And at that point, your body holds the idea for you. You don't need to make the mental effort. You don't need to think about it. The body holds the idea for you. And it means that, like, if you're walking down the street, it's just there. Or if someone says, do you want to do this or that? That's the reference point. That's how you decide. You decide in reference to that commitment because it feels like home. So what I love is that it feels so simple, that you have things that you aren't committed to, you know, like going on holiday to the Bahamas. And then you have a way of committing to it, which is really, in the end, it's just saying, I am going on holiday to the Bahamas. Oh yeah, I am. You know, to begin with, you're like, well, am I? I want to. Can you actually say I am? Yeah. I am going on holiday to the Bahamas, until you can feel it's true, you know, until you make yourself at home with the idea that I am going on holiday to the Bahamas, you know, until you identify I am. And then when the other thoughts and stuff come past, you're like, no, I'm going on holiday to the Bahamas. It becomes your sort of the thing. And when you know that, then you can do that sort of beautiful work that the meditation teachers ask you to do, of changing your mind, you know, of not holding on to being hateful even though it doesn't work, and holding on to being loving, you know, just by saying I am being loving, and doing that little bit of extra work. So it's not a thought, but it's a commitment. And then the only other bit of it is knowing that you don't have to hold on to that forever now. That you can just as easily go, I said I was going to go on a holiday to the Bahamas, but actually I've had a better offer. So I am not going on holiday to the Bahamas. And the thing happens in reverse. You like stop feeling at home with it. You stop identifying with it until your body isn't holding it anymore. Oh, okay, I'm not going on holiday to the Bahamas. And it doesn't hurt. And that's the clarity that I long for. That's the clarity that I practice and teach, is to kind of see what is desirable in terms of like who you want to be or what you want to do. To be able to move it from being a sort of an idea to being an actual commitment that your body holds for you, and to live it as long as it's helpful. And then if something else is more helpful, to know how to let go of it without any suffering, without any drama, without any big anything, just as simply as saying, I am doing it, I'm not doing it.
It took me 55 minutes to understand what you do.
Well, we had other stuff to talk about.
You mean half an hour?
Yeah, half an hour when we started. I got it.
Yeah.
I think you're going to laugh. The word clear throws me off.
Yeah, you might be right.
It doesn't matter. I just think in actuality, if you, the word that I feel when I hear you say it is embodied decision-making, or embodied decision-making isn't even the word I would use. What I heard, what you did just now is you took me through a meditation. In the meditation, I felt myself progressively attach more to a thing that was a thought that I actually would have wanted to see in my life. And it was almost like if I was I kind of was closing my eyes as we were going through this process, because I felt myself moving into the house that you were creating for me, where I could feel the difference of who I am at any stage of that development. So when you finally said, now you are that house, it took me back to a month ago. I was walking the streets of Amsterdam, and I'm walking the streets. I'm walking 20 kilometers a day. And in a week, I said, damn it, 20 kilometers a day, that's 140 kilometers a week. And then I'm like, 440 kilometers a week, I'm walking to Germany basically every day, every week, or I'm walking to. So I said, I'd be fascinated to do a trip. So in a way, as it was like, I had the idea, and then I started taking. I stepped into the house without necessarily knowing where I was going in that direction. But the feeling was, I want to take a long journey. I want to take a walking journey, and I didn't know where that was. And then I looked at that map, and I saw the coastline of the Netherlands, and immediately, it was maybe, I think, 10 seconds after, I knew I was going to walk that coastline. I didn't have a discussion. I said, I just need to run the math. And then I did the math. The direction was 140 some kilometers from top to bottom. I divided it by 7, and I said, Ronnie, next weekend I'm walking the west coast of the Netherlands, and we booked the hotels that night. So it was like, it was the sense of knowing that this is something I wanted. And it was like the feeling when you said the embodied feeling, I knew what that felt like the moment I said I committed to it in a way that was like, I was compelled. The decision made me. I didn't make a decision.
Yeah. So this is the thing. Like, I think the biggest mistake is believing that the sort of work of going from like a need that you feel to an action that you take is in the realm of thinking at all, that it's got any business to do with thinking. Like, if you're reading a book and it's telling you some facts about this and this, then that's thinking, like, oh, that's interesting. No, but like, when you're making decisions, it's about commitments. When you're about to take an action, it's about, does it meet a need that I have? And those commitments aren't held in thought. They're commitments. It's like a different place that you go to.
Yeah.
If someone says, what's the capital of France? Think about it. But if someone says, what do you want for dinner? It's not the same box.
Yeah.
Like, you can Google search your way through the facts, but like, no one can tell you what you want for dinner. No one can tell you what to do with your life. But it's all there, held in the commitments that you've made, in what you hold.
Yeah.
And so it's like using the wrong tool for the wrong job. Like there's a big supermarket around the corner from my house, and I was there really late at night about a year ago, and I bumped into a guy I know who's a meditation teacher. Like people, he's the real deal kind of thing, like shiny and clear. And he was stood in front of the pasta, and he was like, how do you, it's just like, oh, what do you, like, there's 150 kinds of pasta. Like, what do you do when there's all
that's it.
I'm
sorry, I thought you said the pastor, like at the church. The pasta. Sorry, my got it.
Right. And so he's looking at all the spaghetti and the and like that one's a kilo, that one's 500 grams, that one's organic, that one's whole wheat. That was like, he's like, I don't know how to, and I was like, oh, I remember what that's like.
Yeah.
Standing in the supermarket trying to think your way to the right answer of what is the best spaghetti to buy, but you're using the wrong bit of you, because you can't Google like what's the right spaghetti to buy, because it's not about that. It's about, you can't listen up here, you have to listen in here for like, what do I need? Because the spaghetti I need tonight is different from the spaghetti yesterday or tomorrow, and there's so many commitments that come into it, of like the money or the health or the of like, and so when in that moment with him, I was like, oh, I've forgotten I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I walk around the supermarket and I'm like, do I need that? And it's listening, but it's like, do I need that? Do I want that? And I don't think about whether it's the right thing or not. I don't try and do the sort of factual way through it. It's like, do I need that spaghetti? No. Do I need that spaghetti? No. You know, do I need that house? Do I need that car? You know, do I want it? Do I demand it? It's like trying to tune into, like, does this match with my commitment? That's the listening. It's not a thinking process. It's a listening process, trying to match the action of which thing to buy with the commitment you hold inside.
You know, one thing that Case, one of my favorite quotes from Case was, "Freedom is the absence of choice."
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like that. No choice.
And when he said it, you know, of course, when you say it to somebody, freedom is the absence of choice. No, choice is freedom. That is what freedom. But what was funny was that when he said freedom is the absence of choice, and I often I'll refer to it a lot, because when I try to share with someone what that means, it goes back to what Flores Coate mentions, that trying to explain it takes you away from the experience of what it feels like.
But, well, I mean, yes and no. I think, like, it's such a delight to know what you need and take the step, you know, and like, this is talking sort of very literally. You free yourself from the tension of holding on to the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you identified
that would be a beautiful phrase to state that again. You free yourself of holding on to the tension of holding on to the wrong thing.
Right. Right.
And that's exactly what I feel each time I make the statement I made. Freedom is the absence of choice. Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's not a paradox. It's not a kind of weird, crazy thing, but it's literally that you're freeing yourself from a holding on, you know, a useful commitment, holding on to something, but where you're like, oh, I don't want to hold on to this now.
Yeah. You know why I use this a lot? And I think you can identify with this right now as well, right? Bombos, I'm just checking in with Bombos because
with what?
That statement, because in our journey, there's clients that I just will stop working for because they're not doing things which are from integrity, or they're not holding true to commitments, or they're going to fail, and I don't want to be benefiting from their failure. So I've already decided that I'm not. So my choice is, you might think that me leaving now is actually a bad thing, but actually it's because I'm committed to something bigger than the relationship with you, for instance.
So yeah, I think there's something that comes with it. Like, I feel like the clearer that you get, the more you work with integrity.
Yeah.
But that can be a real pain in the ass. It makes it easier to work with integrity, but that makes it harder to work without integrity.
Yeah.
Which is annoying. You know, because sometimes you might be like, oh, could I just take the job already? You know, like, no.
I can give you a great example of why I look to Bambos during this moment. And sometimes I'm going to tell stories on his behalf if I look at his eyes the way that they appear to be. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm just going to assume you're still a little bloodshot from waking up. Bambos told me last week that a client called him and said, hey, I want you to take a portrait of my wife as a gift. I'm going to give it to her. And then Bambos, because he now has clarity on, if you gift something to someone and they don't expect it nor want it, then you don't want to gift that person something. So So Bambos says to this individual, hey, I think it's a great idea, but does she know? And the guy says, no, she doesn't. Yeah. And so Bambos says, listen, I know it might sound weird, but until she knows what she's getting, I would suggest you not give her this gift, because I know that people who get gifts that they don't expect nor desire, it's not good for either of you.
Yeah.
And me.
And him. He knows from experience. So now with that is that awareness and his not accepting, just taking money, and the husband goes to the wife and she said, actually, I didn't want it.
No. Yeah.
She said, I didn't want it. But the fact that the photographer asked you to ask me means that I want it because I trust his judgment.
Yeah, lovely.
Can you imagine that? So that was the exact example. Was freedom is the absence of choice. In that sense, for me, that would translate into, I'm not going to accept money when I know there's going to be a potential issue that people aren't looking at. So that was just to make sure, just to let you know. I don't know if you could equate with that when the story was being told, but that's what I saw in you as we were talking about this now.
I have to say this show has been really confusing for me because the whole time we're talking about something, but it's actually something that you don't grasp with your mind, but it's something that you need to experience. In fact, a question mark that comes for me though, as you were speaking, is when someone feels that they want something, and they go for it, because you were saying, I want this because it's right for me, but you can get it, and just from only by getting it, you know if it was right for you or not. Like, how does that work? Like, I want this relationship and it feels really good, but because the person hasn't lived and experienced life fully to know what they're saying yes or no to, all of a sudden they get the thing that they wanted, and then they realize, oh shit, this is not what I wanted.
Oh, I see. So the title of our session today is how not to make bad decisions. And I read it. I was like, oh, that was not my title.
I know it wasn't. I'm sorry. We should have discussed that, but I did like it.
And I was thinking, I don't think it's that, but I think it's like maybe how to make less, like how to spend less time doing the wrong thing.
So even the example that I gave, Charlie, I wouldn't see it as a bad thing, right? We need to go through those things to get that experience. So
no, we don't, right? Sometimes all you need to do is imagine it. And in imagining it, you're like, no, it's the wrong thing. But we don't even do that, right? It's like, I love this. There was a guy that on a course.
Slow that down for me, because you completely lost me. You said, no, you don't. So what did you mean?
Can I try to address it with him, by the way, Charlie? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Just because I've been doing the languaging thing with Bambos for a while now, and I'd love to see if I can. So what I hear Charlie saying is what I'll often do with people is I will take all of the situations or the decisions they're making, I'll compress it into the reality that they're creating for themselves so viscerally that they can already know what it feels like if they make the decision or continue making the decisions they're making. And in doing that, they don't need to have lived it. They've already had the house that he's creating, which is the I am in that house. And they could say, wow, I'm already living in that house. I don't want to be there. So I don't even need to do that now. So that would be a skill, I would say. I'm seeing I don't work very differently than Charlie in some ways. As I don't believe I do, at least by hearing him speak. But continue now, Charlie.
So I mean, you can call it a skill, but on the one hand, it's just being an alive human. Like if you say, oh, I think I need to go to the shops later, your mind sees in some way, you see yourself in the shop, right? If you're like, oh, I think I should tidy the house, your mind kind of goes through like, oh, where do I need to tidy? But like we have this preview function.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is the better storyteller you are and the more compelling you are, the easier, I think, this is an assumption I make, you make it for another person to imagine the house when they're not able to experience that house on their own.
Oh, no, but I think everyone can. Like, I never tell any stories in the work that I do. I just ask people the questions.
Okay. And well, sometimes I'll help them have the I am house. So that's all I'm
sure.
Yeah.
But I think we're so good at it naturally, but that we sort of learn our way out of doing it. We think we should be thinking about it. We should have a rational thing. But like, if you just entertain the possibility of being there and doing the thing, then like like you said about being a 5-year-old at the beginning, Bambos.
Yeah.
Ask a 5-year-old about anything and they know the answer. If you're like, what do you want your party to be like? They're like, there are clowns and there's this and there's that. And we've got like 1,000 pink balloons and and they're there already and they can see it and they can feel it.
Yeah, but you can ask a 5-year-old, what do you want to eat? And they'll eat sweets.
Yeah.
What's your
and
point?
they might overdose on sweets.
So they'll eat. If you say what do you want to eat for dinner, they'll sell cake.
Yeah.
So what's your point to that, Vamos?
So Charlie says a 5-year-old knows what they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, they know what they want, but it doesn't mean it will be
in their interest
in their
to have
interest.
that.
Yeah. But like, so just the bit that they're good at is not standing in the way of seeing imaginary worlds.
Experiencing that experience. Yes.
Yeah, and fully experiencing it. And so like when I take people through a clearing process, that's the first thing I do is say, like, forget about now, like, you know, what's happening here in current situation, forget about how, you know, the sort of steps and the planning and and just go there. Like, imagine you're already there, you're already doing this thing, you're already running that company, you know, you're already running the marathon, you're already whatever it might be. And when you're there, you know, see how it is, feel how it is to be there. And then I ask them the questions. You know, it's like, okay, when you're there and you're doing that thing, is it what you need? Is it what you want? Is it what you demand? And you know, and it's like the first step of being clear is that kind of listening. That means you can tell you're actually listening to the idea when you can feel it. Like, until that point, you haven't really listened to it. So you don't start the rest of the sort of interrogation of it until you can feel it. You know, if I'm like, oh yeah, I think I'm, you know, gonna get a car. You can tell if I haven't felt it yet. You know, or if someone's pitching a business idea and they're like, yeah, we're gonna open a chain of shops that sell dog hats. You're like, I can tell you haven't actually felt your way there yet. But if someone, you know, the same person, they're like, yeah, we're going to start this chain of shops and we're going to sell dog hats. You're like, oh, I can feel that you felt it, you know, you're already there. And so like we all know how to do it. It's not like a magical sort of mystical skill that you learn. It's like in from the beginning, you know, when you're. And so it's just using that skill, remembering to use that skill of like, of saying like, no, I don't have to go through the shit. I don't have to do 10 years of building the wrong company. I don't have to spend 10 years in the wrong relationship. I just need to imagine what it's like, feel it, and be like, oh no, that's not what I want. Like, so the example I was going to say, Bangladesh, when you got me to slow down a bit, was a guy was on a course I was running, and he said, the thing is, I really want to buy a house. I want to buy a house where I can do my work, you know, sort of a home for my work, buy a building. And he's like, and I've wanted it for 14 years or something. And I said, well, do you want to carry on wanting it for another 14 years? Or are you going to commit to it? And it's this thing of like, if you say, I want to do it, you're saying, I'm not doing it. And so it's like, so what if you entertain the possibility of it actually being true? You know, so you say, I am buying a house for my work. Like, then you're in it. You're not saying I want to do it, then it's over there. You're saying I am doing it. You can try it on. And so he did. And he's like, okay, you know, 14 years. I want to buy a house for my work. I want to buy a house where I can do my work. I want to buy a house where I want to. Okay, try it on. I am building a house. I'm buying a house, building a house where I can do my work. Okay, is that what you need? No. Is that what you want? No. Is that what you demand? No. All of it, no. And I was like, oh, okay. And so he hadn't seen, because he believed you, well, you have to do it before you can, you know. So I was like, okay, so if that's not what you need, then what do you need? And he's like, I need to have a house where I can do my work. Don't need to buy it. I don't really even want to be involved in that whole process, but I need a place where my work can be done, where it's safe and where it's held. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. And then he came back literally the next week, and the beginning of the call was laughing and laughing and laughing. I was like, what? And he said, so someone offered to buy me a house this week. And it got it. He got what he needed, like immediately, because his commitment that had been hurting him for 14 years was to the wrong thing.
Yeah.
he'd been sort of simultaneous, or he'd been committed to two things:
Mm.
buying a house and not buying a house.
Mm.
And so by entertaining the idea, by like trying on the commitment, instead of having these two things of I must buy a house and I must not buy a house, he ended up with the like, oh, I'm not buying a house. I am, finding a way to have a house. Then there was nothing, he wasn't standing in the way. He wasn't pushing it away. And so it became possible.
Mm. I'm leaving space for you, Babos. I have.
I have to say, I'm not fully with you, and I'm also allowing myself to be okay with that in a way that that there's some things that I won't understand.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. There's experiences out there that I can't connect to.
I have to say, as you speak and as we've gone through this, I've understood more and more and more about where it is and how you're working in ways I had never understood before, although we'd spoken a few times. So in some ways, laughingly, I have my own judgment is that, oh shit, Charlie needs a little bit different marketing in order to refine the messaging. That's just stating it outright, because I'm like, oh yeah, there's shit going on here that I can really identify strongly with. In fact, we have a course, or not a course, a show, which I've talked about now in the last two shows, where getting rid of I think and it should and everything, and all that show is going to be about is everything you spoke about the last 10 minutes.
Mm.
Because all I've seen is that in the inability to create the commitment, nothing happens and I don't learn and grow. And there's the fallacy that if I commit, I have to stay true to the commitment, which is just, it's just, no, I commit so I can discover how I feel in fulfilling a commitment that then teaches me where else I want to go.
Totally. It's like you're in a clothes shop and someone says, oh, you should try on this suit. It's really you. You're like, nah, no, I'm going to try it on. It's like, no, just try it on. Nah, it's not really me. And they're like, go on, try it. Just entertain the possibility. You're like, all right, fine, I'll try it on. Oh, that's really nice.
Yeah.
So you have to adopt the position in order to be able to see the world from that place.
Yeah. And I see, and what I'm hearing in this time together is that you've basically made more and more of a science or an art and a science of creating it so that it becomes, because even as I said it to you, I actually loved when you reframed it, because I said, oh, I'll create the room in their head. Right. So, I called it a skill, and I call it a skill because there's a bit of a projection of future, which I'll do in my storytelling. And I'll say, if you continue down this path, this is where it leads. So I'll create that, and I'll do it in business where they might not have as much space as you're asking for. And the executive who's at a high level doesn't really want to be coached. So when you're coaching someone on that level, a lot of times you have to be very assertive to sort of create a reality that they can say yes or no to conveniently. I don't know if you get that. It would be harder for me to engage someone the way you're engaging in this discussion in some of my clients, because everyone has their own way of liking to be coached and mentored. I don't get to decide for them how they want to be mentored, that kind of thing. So in your case, what I'm hearing, which I find to be very, very beautiful, because it keeps more and more of the agency with the individual, is that you are giving them the opportunity to run through the questions, which help them embody more and more of a decision that they haven't yet made, so they can decide how they feel even before having made that decision.
Yeah. So I think when I coach someone, I'm probably more direct than you are.
Oh, funny. Okay.
Faster, because what we've spent the last hour doing is me explaining it.
Yeah.
But if I'm coaching, if I'm working with someone, not coaching them, if I'm working with them, I don't have to explain anything. I just go in and say, well, what do you want to do? What do you want? And they tell me, and I say, is it what you want? And then they say no. And I say, well, okay, then what do you want? And then they say, well, it's this actually. And I'm like, well, great. Are you doing it? And they go from like wanting it to going like, well, no. Okay, what's standing in the way of doing it? well, I'm committed to this other thing. Okay, do you need to stay committed to that other thing? No, actually. And you're like, okay, fine. So if that's not standing in the way, is anything standing in the way? No. Oh, okay. So are you doing it? I am doing it. Okay, how are you doing it? Well, by doing this and this. Can you do that? Yeah. Okay. Can you do it now? Yeah. Okay. Are we done? Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Yeah.
Like, there's no explanation, no theory, no.
No, I got it. And what I'm hearing you say, and what I hear is important in this, is that the context is already set. They come to you with a confusion that they're actually wanting to get clarity around, and you're using the clear technique in order to help them make better and more embodied, or however you want to say it, decisions.
Yeah. I think for me, the idea of talking about embodied feels weird, because it's like,
well, let me say why. Let me tell you why that word was, why I would find it more suitable, is if I'm in my head and I don't know why I'm not making a decision and I'm going back and forth, then by you creating the house that we did earlier, I'm going more and more into the house, and what's going on in me is I'm now feeling it. So when I say embodied, I'm saying I now feel what it feels like to be in that house. So I'm not only making a decision, I'm making an embodied decision. I'm actually feeling what it feels like to have made that decision.
Yeah. No, I think I know what you mean, really. Like,
I don't know. I don't just use vernacular that feels most connected to my body. I don't know. That's the reason.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I guess it's a fair thing to say. Maybe it just doesn't feel separate to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're dealing with commitments, it's like, well, they're there. Like, you're working with commitment. Like, it's like you can't hold on to an idea without your body, and so it's either you're listening to what you're committed to, or you're not. I don't care if you're thinking of it being in your body or not. It's like, it's whether you're paying attention to what you're committed to. That's the thing. You know, you can make a whole bunch of decisions and take actions disregarding what you're committed to, and then you suffer.
Yeah.
You know, that's the like, you know, when you said, like, the Buddhists say all life is suffering, I don't think that's it. I think it's that all like life is tension.
Yeah.
Life is energy. And when you listen to it, then it's fuel, it's power, and you use it. If you don't listen to it, it hurts. You know, it's energy that's pain if you don't listen to it, or power if you do listen to it.
I think that's the quote that Cass Midgley is going to take for the beginning of our show. Our prologue into the actual show itself. It was so well stated with the last sentence.
You're probing him already.
Yes. Cass, that's a note for you in the future. Thank you. We've gone way, way over, but I thought it would be nice to continue, because it will cut out everything with Case at the beginning, I imagine. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
If people want more information, where do they go, and how do they find like more on these activities?
Howtobeclear.com.
Yeah. Howtobeclear.com.
And there's a link there, but on Medium, there's like 8 years worth of everything I've ever written about it. So
I love it.
Yeah.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, dudes.
I love you. I appreciate you making time. I know it took you a few months to trust us.
Yeah, you know.
Flores says thank you as well. So thank you, Flores, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Sweet. Yeah. It's interesting, because I often sense a lot of the people we bring on that we all have very different ways of articulating similar things.
Yeah.
And what I always like to do is try to figure out where is the connection between all of these things, you know? And yeah, I even laugh that the show that I keep saying I want to do is this I think and I should, and all the things that stop us from actually being definitive in our sentences. I hear that Charlie actually has created a science around the thing that I keep laughingly saying, guys, just say it and you'll figure it out afterwards. So I think that's a beautiful serendipity moment that we happen to have him talking about the same thing that I've actually really been enjoying at the moment. Yeah. Mutual friends of ours that keep saying, I think I should do something.
I didn't. No, I don't get the clown anymore.
You don't get the what?
The clown.
The clown was it's April Fool's Day, Bambos. April Fools.
Is it today?
Yes, it's April 1st. So that's it for today. Yeah.
And we're gonna see you guys.
We're going to see you tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow on this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time.
And we're gonna do so much more
On a wonderful
chaos.
Wow, you are out of it. Look at those eyes. See you.